Hi, it's Kim from Chatterbox Quilts. In today's video, I am starting a series on what you can do with orphan quilt blocks. So, in today's video, we're going to be talking about how to use an orphan quilt block to embellish, upgrade, upcycle a jean jacket. So I love going to the thrift store and finding clothing I can use in my quilting projects. And what I always have my eye out for is jean jackets because I wear a lot of them. And I probably have at least 8 of them in my closet. So I have one here. I'll show you this one here. So here's one here, kind of light color, right? And of course, when you're looking for these, you want to check and make sure that you've got, your buttons are all on it and that's not worn in places and things like that. Unless you like that look, of course. And the other thing I look for when I'm getting jean jackets is the back, okay? So I often like to embellish these either with, in this case, we're going to use an orphan quilt block, or sometimes I even embroider on them. So what I'm looking for is a backing that has no seam in the middle, because sometimes they do have a seam down the center. That isn't so bad if I'm putting an orphan quilt block on like I am today, but if I'm trying to embroider on it, that can cause some problems. So I prefer to get ones that are open like this. So the block I'm going to use today is this one here. It's a disappearing 9 patch block, and you can see that Daisy's upset I'm not making this jacket for her, but we carry on. So I've got this disappearing 9 patch, okay, and I think it's going to work really well with this jacket. It's going to really pop off the back of that jacket, right? So how do I prepare this? Well, first off, when I'm doing this, I want to make sure that I don't have raw edges. I'm not going to put this on and stitch it down with raw edges like this, right? I could stitch it down like that and maybe use a satin stitch to go around it and finish it off, but I prefer to do it another way. So what I like to do is I like to fold my edges under, and I'm folding them under about a 1/2 inch, okay? I don't want to lose too much of the block. Typically we use about a 1/4 inch, but I like to do about a 1/2 inch for this purpose. So all I did to do this was I flipped my block over, I took a ruler and an erasable marker. I'm using a friction pen for this particular one. And I'm just lining up my ruler at the 1/2 edge mark along the edge of the block, okay? And then I'm just drawing that line along because that's going to guide me when I go to press it under, okay? If you're better at me at eyeballing things like that, you might not need to do that, but it's just a little bit of extra help, okay? So then I'm just folding it over. Actually, I'll go this way. Just folding it over. And then I'm just pressing it down. So I'm just doing that as I go along here. And once I've done this initial pressing, like that, I want to make sure I take some, I'm using Easy Press solution here, but you could use some Best Press, whatever you like to use. And I'm just going along here. I'm going to press it again because I want it nice and flat. You see how it's sticking up right now. I don't want it to be sticking up like that. I want it nice and flat because eventually I'm going to be stitching this down to my jacket. So I want a nice crisp edge, and if it's not perfectly straight, if it's off a tad, you're not really going to notice it, but do your best. So I would do that for all 4 sides, and then I would have that edge that's finished, right, when I go to put it on my jacket. And a couple other things I'm going to do. I want to know where to place it on my jacket, okay? So, actually I'll pull this back for a second because I want to know where is the middle, horizontally and vertically, on my jacket and on my block. So my block is pretty easy with this block because we've got these lines, right? So that's easy, I don't have to do any marking there. But when it comes to my jacket, okay, I've already drawn a line here. You may not be able to see it all that well. I'll throw the ruler up on here so you can see. I just measured from here and I split the difference and I just marked a line down here, and then same thing, I measured from here to the top, those between those seams, and I put a little mark. It's right here. I know it's hard to see with black on blue, but it's right there, and my other line is right here, okay? So that tells me that's the center. So when I go to put my block on, as I said, my block is pretty easy to line that up. I can line up my seam line along that line I've drawn, and I know that this is the halfway point of my block, and I'll put it up here. Again, if it's off a little bit, it doesn't really matter. And if you don't want to center it like this, maybe you prefer to have it down, let's say, you can certainly do that too. Okay, so there's lots of options for you. But it is nice to have the block centered this way, okay? So one of the things you're going to notice as I move these down and fold these under, I should say, is that this is going to extend past this seam line. I'm okay with that. And the reason I'm not worried about that is because if I want to be inside here with this particular block, so I'm using an orphan block, right? I'm going to lose a lot of that block. If I start folding it back more, I'm going to be losing more of that block, and I really don't want to do that. So if it overlaps a bit, I'm not worried about it, okay? But something for you to think about. So the next thing to do is put it on the jacket. Well, not quite, because there's one more thing I want to do, okay? First off, I'll fold these down and press them better, but I want to do some stitching, okay? I'm going to put this on my jacket. I'm going to top stitch around to put it on the jacket, but that's not going to be enough to hold it, I don't think, because you've got all this that isn't going to be, you know, fastened down in any way. And I want to make sure that, excuse me, that stays nice and flat. And I want to do some additional stitching, right? So just for interest, I want to do some decorative stitching on this block. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to go down. This will be folded under here. Stay there, okay? And I'm going to go down through the center here and up to the other corner. That's where it's going to be folded there. So roughly the center there. Again, if it's not perfect, not to worry, but that's close enough. And I'm just going to draw a line along here, again with an erasable marker. And I know it looks jarring when I use this black friction marker, right? But it's going to come off. And the reason I'm drawing that through the center is because I want to start, and I'm going to use some decorative stitches, and I want to start in the center. Okay, I'm going to start in the center, and I'm going to move out on either side. Okay, and in this example, I'm actually going to use a stitch down here, then I'm going to use a stitch here, and I'm going to use the same stitch here. So I'm going to mirror the stitches going out. And I think I'll do them in about an inch, probably about an inch increments, and that'll be good enough. They'll hold it down, it'll give it some additional interest as well, and I get to use the decorative stitches on my sewing machine, so it's all good, right? Okay, so I'm just going to prep this a little bit more, get these nice and flat, these folded under edges, and then I'll meet you at the sewing machine and we're going to work with some decorative stitches. The first thing I'm going to do is stitch the block around the perimeter with a top stitch. So I've lengthened my stitch to 3.0. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to start adding some decorative stitches starting in the center. I have to get my pins out as I go along here. And I'm just sewing a 1/4 inch in from the edge is what I'm doing. Okay, then I have to turn my jacket. So the biggest challenge when I'm doing this is maneuvering the jacket around and making sure that none of the sleeves or the front of the jacket are underneath. Does that ever happen to you when you're working with things? Sometimes these little corners, I want to make sure they're tucked in far enough that I don't get any of it sticking out. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's see here. All right, so we got this all stitched down here. Okay, I'm looking at this one area here. We had a little bit of a bobble. I might take that out and fix it. We'll see. Or whether it's going to just smooth down enough here. But it looks like everything's okay here. It's all stitched down. Okay, that's looking good. So the next thing I want to do is start adding decorative stitches. And I'm going to start in the center and do that one first, and then move out in 1 inch increments to stitch down the rest of this. So I'll keep everything really nice and adhered, nice and flat to the back of the jacket and give some interest as well. Now it's time for decorative stitches. So I want to talk a little bit about them. First off, I'm using fairly open stitches, so I'm not using any stabilizer. If you have dense stitches, you may need to use stabilizer. In this case, I think the jacket, because it's denim, is going to be enough stabilizer for me, so I'm not too concerned about that. But a few things, I'm starting in the center and moving out to either side, as I mentioned. But I also wanted to take a look at each stitch. I've decided on which ones I want to use, but I want to see where they start forming, because that's going to help tell me how I should line that stitch up with, in this case, this line I have drawn. Okay, so let me pull it under the foot and you'll see what I'm talking about. So on this machine, this is a Jamieson CM17, the stitch I'm using is Quilt Style QS 5, okay? So I've already selected it and you can see my needle has already moved and my needle is in the center of my foot, okay? So this tells me it's going to start in the center and it's going to move back and forth, okay? Some stitches will start on the right side and then move to the left and back, or some will start in the left and move towards the right and back and forth. So you need to know where they're going to start so that you can line them up appropriately on your project, okay? In this case, if they're off a little bit on my jacket, I don't think you're really going to notice it, but it's a good thing to keep in mind and to note when you switch to the different stitches, and you'll see as I do that. So I'm going to start here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and keep the center of my foot along this line. Try being the operative word, okay? So we're going to go to the edge here, and I'm starting, if I can remember to do this with all of them, I'm going to start just inside the stitches here, so I can just drop my, use my little thumb wheel there to drop that needle down, and we're going to just get started here with this, see how it goes. So you can see, in just a moment here, there we go. See how it's coming back to the center, so that's what I'm trying to keep on this center line, okay? And we're going to make it a little bit quicker than that. I think we can do it a little bit faster. And you may notice I've moved off my line a little bit because I think my line should be over here a little bit. I had a couple of them on here. I took the wrong one off apparently. So I'm moving over a little bit because I'm trying to hit the center as we go through these seams. Okay, so remember this line's going to be erased, so you're not going to see that black line down there, so you're just going to see that stitching off and on. Of course, it's on the orange fabrics here, so you're not going to see a lot, but it's there. So we got that tacked down, okay? And then I'm going to move out. So it's sort of like when you're free motion quilting. You start in the center and move out from there, right? So I'm going to add some more stitches. As I said, I want to have them about 1 inch apart. So that's why I have this guide bar on here. And I was using the AccuFeed Flex foot here. This is the UD sole, so it's open so I can see what I'm doing on this Jamieson CM17. And you have this guide bar that comes. It's really helpful when you're doing walking foot quilting, which is kind of what we're doing here, I guess, in some ways, adding these decorative stitches. So I can go back up here. I don't have to mark lines all the way along. I can go back up here and say, okay, I want to start this far. Let's go the other way here. This far from the center line. So I kind of line that up in the center of the stitch. and again, figure out where I want to go, where I want to start, just on that top stitching there. And I can run this along the center of my previous stitch, and then I know I'm going to be an inch away. So I can move it and I can use it on the other side as well. So it works really well, saves you from having to mark your fabric. So whether you're quilting, like walking foot quilting, or doing something like this, it is a lot easier to use that guide bar than it is to have to go through and mark everything on your quilt, right? So I'm going to be adding a few more stitches here to this project, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like. So we're down to the last decorative stitch. We're just going to stitch this up, and then I'll be able to show you what it looks like. Okay, so I'm going to meet you back at the cutting table, and we'll take a look at what the jacket looks like when it's all done. So here's a closer look at what that orphan block now looks like on the back of my jean jacket. So you can see I've got all these decorative stitches going along it, so that keeps it securely in place, and of course it gives it a really nice interest on that block as well. Now, what's it look like on? Well, let's try it on and take a look. So I've got another embellished denim jacket to add to my closet. Now, if you're wondering what else you can do with denim jackets, don't worry, I got you covered. Check out this video that has all the information that you need. And for more helpful quilting information, be sure to go to my website at www.chatterboxquilts.com.